afternoon, everybody. I do have some good news. So lunch is only a few minutes away. The bad news is that I'm the last person standing between you and your lunch, so you'll have to bear with me for the next 10 minutes or so. So as I was introduced, my name is Ato Messay Amerga. I've been coming to here every year or so for the last 15 years, always in a capacity to visit families. So it's the first time I'm actually speaking as an industry professional. I am in the wireless field, have been in the wireless field for the last 23, 24 years or so. So the theme of my talk is going to be tech. So us technologists, we know how to dream, we know how to think about what 2050 is going to look like. And all I can tell you is that, in short, the future is going to be fantastic, okay? And the main advice I'll give to Ethiopia is that we have to catch up very, very fast, okay? So why am I here today? So I am a US citizen, okay? But as many of the people have said today, I am an Ethiopian by birth, okay? So I do consider Ethiopia our collective motherland, and so therefore we have to do whatever we can to help while this country is on the current inflection point that it's on. I do think we do follow a little personal time that I have what's happening in this country. And I do think that it's a future full of promise, a future full of risk as well. But I do think those of us that are abroad in critical, positions that will allow us to essentially advise how to move the country forward, we have to do our best to ensure that we, do whatever we can that the future of this country is as bright as it could ever be. Okay, so I came out of graduate school back in the late 90s, 1997 to be precise. And that era is commonly known in the industry as the dot-com era. Okay, the dot-com era, most people know it as a period of excessive financial speculation. A lot of people lost money, but the historians view this time as a time of immense technological breakthroughs and advances. A lot of, and access to high-speed internet. The internet was available in universities and in most government offices, but actually, populations around the world started to experience what it means to talk to each other, to be connected on the internet, somewhere in the mid-90s. Also, the mid-90s turned out to be the birth, this is when big companies like Amazon, Google, Alibaba was here a couple of weeks ago, I believe, were all born, okay? All the technology, and of course, if you look at what's happened between the mid to late 90s to where we're at right now, the technological advances around the world have been just staggering. So you could take, for example, drones, smartphones, position location, broadband communications, social media, digital currency. All of these things are things that have all been born over the last 20 years or so. Okay? And the reason why I'm sort of visiting history is to let you know that, while basically technology has been growing at a fairly fast pace, it's going to go even faster moving forward, and we basically have to catch up as fledgling in this space. Okay? I'm going to skip a lot of the material that I have so that all of you can have your food pretty soon. I am pretty hungry myself, and we do need to make sure that we get to lunch pretty quickly. But a little bit of history, okay? So digital, all of this digital computers, your smartphones, etc., all have their origin somewhere in the 50s, okay? In the 50s, at Bell Labs, engineers, some of whom were from Africa, invented the transistor, okay? The transistor was a key element to the invention of digital logic. Digital logic became processors. Processors created microprocessors. All the computers that you have today use some type of compute engine. And while we all started pretty slow, one human out of two in the world have regular access to a computer in 2019. In the 1960s, you needed a computer that was literally the size of this room to be able to do complex computations for perhaps days, whereas the same computations could be made from the smartphones you all hold in your hands today with a fraction of a second. Okay? Think about what that essentially means, and I'm not going to get into gate count and where we're at in semiconductors, but I think that metaphor should serve everybody in this audience really well. Another important trend has been the paradigm shift from wired communication to wireless. Wireless has been introduced initially as a way to sort of cut the cord, and mostly for voice communications, the ability for humans to talk to each other, make phone calls outside, essentially. It all started with technology named amps, or 1G as we now call it, and it was basically an analog technology. It wasn't very good from a capacity standpoint. It uses an old technology called frequency domain multiple access. In the end, it was terrible from a security standpoint. If people got access to basically a few identifiers of your phone, they could easily eavesdrop in terms of what you were saying. And it was not essentially where we're at today. So to make a long story short, amps became GSM or CDMA. CDMA gave way to essentially UMTS or DO. And then these 3G technologies gave way to what we now call LTE or long-term evolution. Long-term evolution is an important technology milestone. It happened sometime in 2009 or some time frame where people around the world, in the developed world, got access to broadband internet in the palm of their hands. Okay? And simultaneously, processors were so advanced that they became miniaturized enough to be in mobile phones and enabled the smartphones that you hold in your hands today. Those smartphones run extremely powerful operating systems or software that allow you to literally do almost, basically you need your smartphone. Today your smartphone is the most important device that you carry around on your person today. Why is this important? I just want to talk a little bit about where we're heading with technology. This year, some operators around the world will be deploying something called 5G. 5G is important from a perspective of it will allow users to have data rates in the gigabits per second, okay? And 5G is essentially technology which will be critical in the revolution of not only very, very high-speed internet for users, but all for people, but actually for machines to be able to talk to each other in a very, very reliable way. I'm going to skip all of the acronyms today so that this is something that will be impressionable in the broader room here. What's happening in the world really? So Ethio Telecom is part of GSMA. GSMA is a consortium of mobile operators around the world. It has something like 700 plus mobile operators in its midst. It suggests that 75% of internet access in 2025 is going to come from the developing world. Okay, that means basically India, essentially Southeast Asia, as well as Sub-Saharan Africa. And in 2025, most of or I would say half of the population in Sub-Saharan Africa is going to have access to a high-quality internet. Essentially, it's 600 million people just in Sub-Saharan Africa, and Ethiopia is going to essentially have similar statistics. So some of the statistics that were previously mentioned about internet penetration being around 15 to 18%, I really do believe that if the right policies are adopted, we will be at 50% or above in just a few short years, 7 years or so, or 5 to 7 years or so. Okay, let's see. From a technology perspective, and many of us are going to get to discuss this during some of the breakouts in the halls this afternoon, but the grand vision in the next 3 decades or so is that we're going to be surrounded by smart devices that are extremely powerful, okay, from a compute perspective, that will communicate with each other very, very reliably at extremely high speeds, will offload some of their computations to what are called quantum computers, okay, that will be cryogenically, that will be cooled cryogenically to just a few kelvins above zero, to be able to solve the world's biggest challenges from a computation perspective. That's really the vision over the next 30 years. And so I heard a lot of solutions being discussed in today's panels. I really do believe that what we're working on in tech, while tech itself is not an end, it's a means to an end, will help solve a lot of the problems that we face around the world, and especially here in Ethiopia. People mentioned city management, urban transportation, utilities, security. You could basically do, with 5G or even 6G coming up in the next 10 years or so, the communications wirelessly are going to be so reliable that you will be able to do remote surgeries from very far away. Complicated, life-threatening surgeries will be done wirelessly from somewhere, let's say in the capital. Think about that. So the most experienced, skilled doctor in, let's say, heart surgery is going to be able to perform heart surgery thousands of miles, or maybe hundreds of miles away in the case of Ethiopia, to save the life of a child. So I think about just how powerful that technology is going to be. And this technology is going to be in the palm of our hands in the next 7 to 10 years, okay? So we have a great opportunity. I think we have a great responsibility to make sure that we adopt the policies that are needed to harvest these opportunities, okay? Many people talk about challenges. I think I'm just going to focus on the opportunities. So what do we need to do? So let's think about how we're managing our spectrum and resources, okay? A lot of the 5G, 6G technologies are going to be enabled by very high frequencies, okay, so spectrum, that need to utilize very complex signal processing techniques called massive MIMO, among others. And we in Ethiopia do have a leg up as a result of the fact that we have a ton of spectrum that is available in the mid, low to mid tier or so, anywhere from 700 megahertz all the way up to, let's say, 5 gigahertz that is available. That gives us a leg up to deploy these technologies in a way that is economically far more viable than what's currently possible in the US, for example. We need to think about how we get ourselves technically involved in standards bodies around the world that actually shape the future and the technology of the future. I do believe Ethiopia, if you want to be one of the people that, or one of the countries that will be important, 200 million people in 2050 is a significant percentage of the world's population, even if the world population goes to 9 billion. If we're going to be at that level, I do believe fundamentally that we need to participate in these ecosystems to ensure that the technical progress is shaped by a lot of our demands and a lot of our challenges that are in front of us. I do think that we need to invest in startups locally to make sure that the talent that is coming up through the educational system has employment that is steered towards what really matters, which, at least in the tech field, it's not enough to basically graduate thousands of engineers every year, or thousands of software engineers, etc. The opportunities for local employment have to be there. That means investment in startups. We have to adopt and copy some of the playbook of what is used in the West to actually leapfrog and develop ourselves much more quickly than we have in the past. So I really do believe that we have all the means, we have the society, population, the will, and a highly educated society, both here and abroad, to be able to see this through. So thank you very much. I'll say no.
Okay, thank you very much, Ato Messay. I would like to request you to join me in thanking the panel, including Professor Fatim, who I think has left, Professor Sulla, Professor Maskaram, Dr. Angaran, and Dr. Messay. Thank you very much. On behalf of the organizing committee, I apologize that we will not give you a chance to interact with them, to ask questions, to comment, but I'm sure you will be able to do that during lunch time, during coffee breaks. So I think now we go out for lunch, and perhaps the other announcements. Thank you very much.
Amazing. I learned a lot of things this morning. One of the things I learned is that the price of success must be paid in full, and it must be paid in advance. That means there's a lot of hard work that is awaiting us. The topics that were discussed are important building blocks for successful nation building. So next we'll be having lunch, like the recent presenter said. It's a good news. The dining hall is located behind you.